Well, look at that. We made it to Friday again. And that means it's time for another episode of the Leaf Podcast. And in this episode, I got some really weird encounters for you. I mean, I say that in every video, don't I? But the encounters that I have in this one are particularly weird and strange. A lot of them aren't so scary as some of the other ones. They're just very, very bizarre. And I have something involving Dogman later on in this episode, and it's pretty interesting, and you'll understand what I mean by interesting when I get to it. But first, we all got to Friday, we're all here, so tell me, how was your week? Let me know down in the comments. And first off, I have an encounter with a Glimmerman for you. Well, two encounters, but the same person, so we'll just start off with that. And of course, I'll post the website that I found this on down in the comments. It's called Unsettling Things, I believe. Not 100% sure because sometimes I just screenshot the thing and put it in my little folder, but it'll be in the description. Anyways, so a woman from Illinois shared two encounters that she had. It was posted originally on Journal News Online and then reposted by this place. So this woman was 5 years old when her first sighting or encounter occurred. It was in southern Illinois. It was in the fall. It was not too far from the Cahokia Mounds, which is kind of maybe a connection to something there. But she was looking for arrowheads at the edge of the woods. This is behind her grandmother's house. She says, "I have been out there for quite a while, because I remember I had a pretty decent sized hole going, when something caught my eye up in the tree that I was next to. I almost don't know how to explain it, but it looked like almost like a heat wave coming off the branch. I'm staring at this, quote, heat wave, and I realize that it's a human shape. So here I am, 5 years old, and wondering why there's an invisible man in the tree. I remember feeling scared, but unsure of what to do. Then it started moving and making a faint clicking sound. After she heard this, she turned and ran inside, and it wasn't until that she was 12 years old and that she watched the movie Predator when she saw the Predator on screen and was like, oh my god, that's it. And that's really it for her first encounter. Then we go to 2004. Of course, by this point, she's an adult. She has 3 children of her own. She just moved to a new apartment on the outskirts of town. She said that there was a small wooded area nearby. And then she says this. One night, I was up late doing laundry and stuff, and I had just put the kids to bed. I decided to take a smoke break before I went to sleep. So there I am, back there on the porch, and I started hearing this faint clicking sound. She expected another visit from this groundhog that she had seen a few days earlier, but then she said, I didn't see any groundhog or any movement from the ditch, so I go back to my cigarette. The faint clicking sound keeps happening, and a slight shift of movement makes me look up into the tree that's left of my porch. It's there. The same invisible thing that I had seen when I was 5. It's like a distortion, and it's in a humanoid shape. It's crouched down on the branch with an arm out, holding on to the trunk of the tree. I couldn't believe it. I was like, is this happening? Has it come to kill me for seeing it all those years ago? She got up and then she ran inside her apartment. She locked all the doors and windows, turned off all the lights. But that wasn't enough. She really wanted to get like a stealthy look at this thing to see if it was still there. So she looked back out into the tree through a window, and there was nothing there. She goes on to say, just as I was finally talking myself down, my neighbor's dog comes running across the yard and starts barking at the tree, at the same branch that I had seen this predator thing. That pretty much freaked me out because this dog was not a barker. I've actually before this never heard him bark at anything, even the groundhog that had been hanging out in the ditch. The barking went on for a few minutes until I hear the neighbor lady who owns the dog call him back inside. The dog, reluctantly, turned to go back home, stopping every few feet to look back at the branch of the tree until he was out of my sight. I didn't sleep that night, and I've never seen anything like that again. I don't know what to think of it. So of course, we've heard many Glimmerman encounters and I've even done videos about them. The reason why that I picked this one is because it had that extra layer to it that you don't usually get with some of the other ones. A lot of the other ones involve hunters. In some cases, I think in one video I did, it was a guy who was in a field. There was an old barn on the property, and one charged up to him and lifted him off the ground. But the extra layer with this one was that it said that it was near a burial ground. Now, as we know, going to a burial ground, a mound, any graveyard even, things are a little different there. Things feel a little thin, if that's the right word for it. So that makes me kind of wonder if this thing isn't from here and it's just able to come through during that time. And another question is that since like a lot of these seem to vary so much, you have to wonder if it's all the same creature. And what I mean by that is that there's so many different theories. Some people think that it could be like some kind of military special forces thing, where a soldier could have some kind of device that allows them to do that shimmery thing like the Predator. Some people think that that's its true form. It just is that. Other people think that it's some kind of cryptid. Some people think that they're Bigfoot. So it makes you wonder if they're all true. Humanity often draws influence from things we see in the wild to improve our own technology. I've often heard many conspiracy theories too that a lot of times when you see something in media, such as the Predator, that's a real thing. Not maybe like that, but that technology is real, and that movie is how they go on to fund it. That's just what I've heard in that theory. Sometimes I think movies are just movies, but you never know. But the reason why I said, what if they're all true, is because there's many encounters of Bigfoot able to just kind of disappear, pretty much at will sometimes. And then we have these cases of the Glimmerman, and then we have cases of other bizarre looking cryptids that seem to be able to do the same thing. I mentioned it before, but including that story, I don't remember where it was from, but these guys were camping in like a granite field or a boulder field, and these things appeared, but you could only see their eyes, and you could see the vague shape of them. They were only about 4 feet tall. He could see their eyes, but whenever he shined a light on them, there was nothing there. Their eyes only appeared in the darkness. I don't know. Let me know what you think about it, because I'm kind of rambling on about it, so I'm really curious. Do you think that these things happen near places where the veil is thin, or near places where it's kind of common, ironically, for high strangeness to happen? But that encounter, and the things I was just talking about being out in the woods and seeing things like that, really kind of dovetails nicely over into the other weird encounter. So I say weird encounter, but it's really unknown exactly what he was encountering. It's more so that it really kind of goes from this, and it really leans into the missing 411 type of phenomenon. So his own experience wasn't that long, and really not much happened. It wasn't until after, and I'll get into it here. So I went hiking once. I was all alone. I don't remember exactly where it was. It wasn't too far from my house, but there's a lot of woods there anyways. I heard a growl about 400 feet away, a very low growl, but for some reason, I was oddly drawn to it, and I started walking toward it. Eventually, I was able to just pull myself away from it, and once I was able to do that, it felt like I snapped out of a trance, and I ran away from it and back to my car. I never thought too much of it, just that it was a weird experience. But then, I heard some passengers in my Uber. I used to drive Uber for side cash. They were talking about a podcast that they had heard, where a few marathon runners were going for a run alongside some mountain, when one of them decided to run up ahead of them, and when they caught up to him, he was completely naked. He was walking toward a tree, with all of his clothes folded neatly on top of a rock. His friends were able to yell at him, which apparently snapped him out of whatever trance he was in. And after he got clothed back up, they all got out of there, and he said that he didn't remember anything. The last thing he remembers before entering that trance was the sound of a nearby growl that somehow felt comforting. That, of course, scared the crap out of me, and I asked them what podcast it was on, but then we got to their destination and they just hopped out, so I never found out. But yeah, I almost had that happen to me. And I thought that I would include that for obvious reasons because it's super strange. And just what do you think that low growl was? Do you think it was a creature? Do you think it was something else? Do you think that it was some kind of fae? Because I know that being from the Maritimes and stuff, we have a lot of Irish influence on our culture. And I know that in Newfoundland, among the older crowd, the belief in fairies is still very, very prevalent. So it makes me wonder if that kind of growl is similar to like the Pied Piper kind of thing. It's really hard to say, but these are just thoughts that go through my head whenever I read this stuff like that. But of course, I would like to know what you think. What do you think that growl was? What do you think about it makes someone feel so comforting that they can just go off into a trance and start walking toward it? And better yet, what do you think is on the other end of it? Because for me, it kind of seems like, what is it, an anglerfish that has that little light on the end of it? And it's just terrifying looking, and all the fish get attracted toward it, and then they just get them. But, of course, moving on, I have 2 Dogman encounters. One of them is actually from my province, and I'll get into that in a second. But I'll go over this first one first. This was sent in by Anonymous. So I don't want to say where I live, because I don't want people in my family to think I'm crazy. I live in an older house, but it's way out in the country. Generally out here, I get lots of forest animals, deer, foxes, raccoons. One time, I accidentally ran into a skunk, and by ran into, it was dark one morning in the early fall, and I literally stepped on it. I also have a habit of feeding all these animals, so it's no wonder why they are kind of used to my presence and kind of used to me. But anyways, I want to get right into what happened one particular weekend. On that Friday, I went out to feed the animals. I very quickly realized that what I had left a few days prior was still there. This, of course, wasn't super out of the ordinary. They were wild animals after all. Sometimes they come around on a predictable schedule, sometimes they don't. Even the quiet didn't seem weird to me. It wasn't like an eerie quiet. It was more of a peaceful silence. But what I did find weird was where it looked like that something had dug up the area. Usually I would think that a skunk had done this, but this was quite different. A skunk can easily destroy one's lawn, but this was massive chunks of grass just ripped up, shredded, and thrown around. I knew I couldn't put it all back together right now, so I just made a note of it and added it to my ever-growing to-do list. After this, I was walking around my house toward the garden shed. This is when I noticed something else weird. A window in the kitchen that's about 6 feet off the ground was fogged up. Like, not normal fogged up like I was cooking. Like someone had been standing there, breathing on it. I immediately thought of every horror movie I've ever seen, but this coupled with the lack of animals did give me pause. That day, though, nothing else really happened, and by that afternoon, I had seen some birds come back around, but that's about it. Nothing out of the ordinary happened until Saturday morning, when I went outside, this time to check on the window again because I was curious. Again, it was fogged up, but now there was something there with it. There were claw marks all around the window, very bizarre and very creepy. I racked my brain, thinking what could have done this. I didn't have to wonder for long, though, as that same night I found out. Since it was a Saturday night, I sat down to watch the hockey game and then a movie afterwards, a very cozy night in. I go into the kitchen for something and I see what had been standing there fogging up the window. I heard the scratching noise first. I flicked on the light. It took a few seconds for it to register, but I was looking at what looked like a wolf's head. A wolf's head, 6 feet off the ground. This didn't make any sense. It even reacted to the light. It looked at me. It looked like it didn't want me to see it. It then backed away from the window and disappeared into the darkness. I have no idea how long I stood there, or how long it was there waiting for me. But now, there I was, waiting for something, anything to happen. There are no wolves here, nothing even close. I eventually snapped out of whatever feeling I was in, and I honestly didn't know what to do. So I just went and sat back down, and I just kind of sat there in front of the TV until the sun came up on Sunday morning. Whatever it was never came back, and a few days later, the animals have returned. So, not gonna lie, having a window that's kind of not super high off the ground and then having something looking in the window at you is genuinely one of my fears. And in this case, you have no idea how long that thing has just been there, looking in the window, possibly watching you do whatever. It's super creepy. But now, I obviously hope I could do this story justice. But still, that's literally one of my fears, so as soon as I read it, I was like, I have to include this. And of course, I'm glad that it didn't come back, because a lot of people, it goes away for a while and then comes back and does the same thing. But in this case, he said that this happened quite a few years ago, and he still lives at the same house. So of course, what kind of dogman do you think would just do that? I know we talked about before how some of them, like other cryptids, probably have different kinds of temperament. Some are more curious, some are genuinely accepting of humanity, some are feral, and some are just hostile toward anything else that's not them. And I did have that story from the original video I was going to do a couple weeks ago about crawlers and Dogman, but then I lost everything on my laptop, but I managed to find that one. It was stuck in a text file that I don't remember even making, but I'm glad it was there. And now this last one I have for you is also a Dogman encounter. I found this somewhere else, but it was originally posted on dogmanencounters.com. I'm sure all of you know all about that website. And the reason why I have this one is because it was seen in my province of New Brunswick. So I'll read it off and then I'll talk about it after. Central New Brunswick, a huge Dogman encounter happened in the fall, the 1940s. Granddad said when he was a teenager, he and his older brother Duke were up in the early hours checking trap lines on an old motorbike. It was the early fall. Frost was on the grass, and early morning mists hung around the forest edges. He was rolling cigarettes with his brother, and they were out of matches. So they dipped a bit of cloth in the gas tank and ignited it off the coil wire. While Duke kicked the bike over without an ignition, it sort of sounds like an animal call. That's how Granddad described it. Anyways, just as they started smoking their cigarettes, my grandfather noticed something bounding through the tree line toward them. My granddad said that it ran the way a bear did, but it stopped several yards from them and stood up. On its hind legs, it was still too far away to tell exactly what it was, but they assumed it was a black bear because they are very common in New Brunswick. That's when it began walking, upright, toward them. As it got nearer, Granddad said that it looked like a werewolf. His family origin was German, so this was not unknown. It got as close as 20 feet away from them, and then began to eye them closely. It sniffed their smokes and then turned and hopped or ran back into the trees. Granddad said that they were not scared. They were very shocked that such a creature was living in the woods. Granddad said it was taller than any man. It had a huge head, evil eyes, and long, upright ears. It had hands with long claws, and it had hair all over its body. I can't remember what color he said the fur was, but he said it had wolf-like legs as well. So, The reason why that I bring up that one is that it's from central New Brunswick, and I know where that happened. The names don't sound familiar, but I know the general area of where that may have happened. It's a place called Dungarvan, and it's very rural. There's a lot of camps there, and it's hard to explain. It's a whole thing in New Brunswick, the Dungarvan Hooper and all that stuff. But if this is indeed in Dungarvan, I can go there and I can maybe film something or see if anything happens. Because it seems that this just happened in the morning or during the day. Now, Dungarvan itself, one end of it is very residential. It's not that creepy. But when you get way, way down into the woods, and this is way past all the camps, even the hunting camps, it gets a little eerie down there. And I don't know how the cell service is down there nowadays. It's been a while since I've been down there. But the last time that I was down there at night, it was really creepy, and we did see some weird orbs and stuff, but like, that could be anything. But yeah, I just thought that I would end on that one, because it's more closer to home, I guess. I know that area, not super well, but I've been there lots of times. So maybe sometime I could just go there and see if anything happens. But my luck, even though everybody else goes there and nothing happens and it's just a normal time, my luck, I go there and actually see it, even though this happened in the 1940s. I know I kind of hyped it up like it was super crazy and all that stuff, but it's more just crazy for me because I know the area. Central New Brunswick is quite familiar to me. In fact, the geographical center of New Brunswick is Boys Town. And if you ever go there, there's a big flagpole by the Canada Post to commemorate, I guess, that this is the center point of the province. I know that part isn't creepy, but it's more just like New Brunswick mentioned. I have to talk about it, you know. I'm sure that anybody who lives in a state that's not usually mentioned, and whenever it is mentioned, it's usually not in a good light, that whenever something like this does happen, you're like, that Leonardo DiCaprio scene from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where he's like pointing at the TV. That's me right there whenever that happens. But anyway, I thought that I would end off on that note, that maybe sometime I could actually go there. Maybe not now because it's getting like into late in the year and you don't know when it's going to snow, but maybe in the spring, maybe something like that. Maybe I can find my way up there, maybe ask around. Because I know people, so I can ask around and see if anybody had heard anything. And if they did, it would be super cool to do some kind of interview with them or find out their stories. But with all of that, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, and if you did, then feel free to like and subscribe. And of course, there's all kinds of links in the description to support the channel. There's memberships and super thanks here on YouTube, and of course, I hope you tune in for Sunday's video. Sunday's video is on New Zealand. I don't think I've ever done a video on New Zealand before, and it is crazy, so make sure to tune in for that. And with all of that, I thank you for pulling up a stump, and I thank you for watching. Have a good weekend, have a good Friday, and I'll see you Sunday.